The communication system enables the crew to talk to other stations through VHF and HF radios. It also enables communication with a ground mechanic. There are two communication systems from the cockpit to the cabin. The passenger address (PA) system for passenger announcements, and the cabin interphone system to talk to a cabin attendant. In addition, there is a call system which enables the cockpit to call the ground mechanic and the cabin crew, the ground mechanic or the cabin crew to call the cockpit. The cockpit voice recorder CVR is also included in the communication system. Note, the evacuation command system, which is also part of the communication system, will be discussed in the cabin presentation. Control of all radio communications is achieved through radio management panels, RMPs, and audio control panels, ACPs. Let's start with the RMPs. There are two RMPs located on the center pedestal and an optional third one on the overhead panel. They are used to tune all radios. Note, RMP can also be used as backup for nav-aid tuning in case of failure of both FMGCs. See A320 navigation chapter. We will now look at the different controls and indications of the RMP. The on-off switch controls the power supply. The radio selection keys enable the pilot to select a communication radio. The active window displays the active frequency of the selected radio. The standby STBY window displays the standby frequency. The dual rotary knob enables the pilot to change the standby frequency. The outer knob for the megahertz and the inner knob for the decimals. And the transfer key exchanges the standby and active frequencies. The standby navigation, standby nav keys, provide backup navigation tuning in the event of dual FMGS failure. These keys will be discussed in the navigation chapter. On the A320, any RMP can tune any communication radio, but each one is normally dedicated to a particular radio. RMP1 to VHF1, RMP2 to VHF2, RMP3 to VHF3 or HF1. The selector light illuminates white when a pilot selects a radio on an RMP which is not dedicated to that RMP. This will be explained in more detail in the normal operation module. As we have seen, the RMPs tune the desired radio frequencies. Let's now look at the ACPs, which provide control of radio transmission and reception. There are 3 ACPs, each located next to an RMP, 2 on the center pedestal, an optional third one on the overhead panel. Let's look at the different controls of the ACP. The transmission keys enable you to select any radio or interphone system. A green light illuminates on the selected key. Only one transmission key can be selected at a time. The call light flashes amber with a buzzer when a cell call is received on the applicable radio, VHF or HF. The MEC light flashes amber with a buzzer when a call is initiated by the ground mechanic. The ATT light flashes amber with a buzzer when a call is initiated from any flight attendant station through the cabin interphone system. The reset key silences any buzzer and extinguishes the flashing amber light associated with any of these calls. The reception knobs enable the pilot to select and adjust the volume of the following systems: communication radios, navigation aids, the interphone, the PA. When released out, the respective radio or interphone is selected. The knob illuminates white, and by rotating it, you can adjust the volume. Any number of selections can be made simultaneously. Any selected radio and/or interphone can be heard through loudspeakers. Each loudspeaker has its own separate volume control. The interphone radio int/rad switch is a 3-position switch. 2 of the positions are latched, 1 is not. Int, latched. Neutral, latched. Radio must be held. When in the int position, the switch operates as a hot mic on either the boom sets or the oxygen masks. This position enables communication between cockpit crew members or between cockpit and a ground mechanic without PTT key action. When the switch is held in the radio position, it operates as a press-to-talk PTT on the selected transmission channel using the boom set or oxygen mask. The side stick PTT switch has the same function as the radio position on the int radio switch. The voice key suppresses a nav-aid ident signal to enable clearer reception of voice messages. For example, ATIS transmission on a VOR frequency. The passenger address PA transmission key, when pressed and held, enables cabin announcements to be made from the cockpit through the boom set, oxygen mask or hand mic. Use of this key will be discussed in the normal operation module. PA announcements may also be made using the cockpit handset. The calls panel enables the cockpit crew to call a ground mechanic or the cabin crew. When the mech push button is pressed, a light illuminates on the external power panel and a horn sounds to alert the ground mechanic. When either the forward or aft push button is pressed, a captain call message appears at the appropriate cabin station and a high-low chime sounds in the cabin. When the optional All push button is pressed, a captain call message appears at all the cabin stations and a high-low chime sounds in the cabin. When the emergency push button switch is selected on, the on light flashes white and the call light flashes amber. An emergency call message appears at all the cabin stations, and 3 high-low chimes sound through all cabin loudspeakers. If an emergency call is initiated from the cabin, the on light flashes white, the call light flashes amber, and 3 long buzzers sound in the cockpit. The cockpit voice recorder CVR is used to record all the communications and oral warnings in the cockpit. Only the last 2 hours of the recording are retained. The CVR is controlled through the recorder panel. The ground control push button allows the CVR to be manually powered when on ground. When pressed for 2 seconds, The CVR Erase push button enables the complete erasure of the memory if the aircraft is on the ground, the parking brake is on, and the ground control push button is switched on. The CVR Test push button enables the CVR to be tested. You will practice this test in the normal operation. You have now seen the RMP, the ACP, the Calls panel, and the Recorder panel. You will be looking at them in more detail in the normal operation module.